תודה רבה, בוקר טוב, שומעים, אתה גבוה. זהו. בוקר טוב, תודה שהזמנתם אותי, שמח לבוא. גם לא מזמן עברתי לגור כאן, במודיעין. ויש לי גם איזה סנטימנט לאזור הזה, זה עניין אישי, אתם מכירים את האנדרטה שם ליד קברות החשמונאים, 8 פירמידות בטון שמנציחה את חללי צה"ל, אחד מהם זה אבא שלי. מלחמת העצמאות, מבצע דני, אבל זה סיפור אחר. אז תודה רבה, ואנחנו נתחיל. את המרצה הראשון אני אציג פעמיים, פעם בעברית, פעם באנגלית. דוקטור סקוט סטריפלינג, אוניברסיטה הבפטיסטית ביוסטין ומן ה-Associate of Biblical Research, ABR. בעבר ניהל חפירה בחרבת אל-מקטיר, פה באזור בנימין. אותי עניין המקווה שהם מצאו, אבל זה שוב סיפור אחר. בשנים האחרונות, בשלושת השנים האחרונות, ועל זה הוא גם ידווח לנו, סקוט מנהל חפירות מחודשות בתל שילה, באזור של חומת האמבי, שכבר חלקים ממנה נחשפו כבר על ידי המשלחת הדנית, וגם אחר כך על ידי משלחת פינקלשטיין, ישראל פינקלשטיין חפר בשילה. ועל זה אנחנו נרצה לשמוע, אני בהחלט אשמח לשמוע על האמבי כאן, למרות שאני ארכיאולוג קלאסי, אבל יש לי איזו זיקה לירושלים. And now in English, I hope I make it. Dr. Scott Stripling, Baptist University of Houston, and the Associates of Biblical Research, ABR, has in the past led excavations at חרבת אל-מקטיר, more to the east of us. And in the last 3 seasons of excavations in Tel Shiloh, I will not say Shiloh, let me say it only Shiloh, especially on the Middle Bronze Age fortifications, which were already partially exposed by former expeditions. And this is indeed is already an important contribution to the MB in the mountains of this land. Please.
Boker Tov, good morning. So I have a lot to say in a few minutes. I want to first of all thank Aaron for organizing the conference, for inviting me. Our organization, ABR, has been excavating here now in the highlands of Israel for 40 years, starting in 1979 at Khirbet Nisya, Sagot. We actually began the year before the community was founded there. And then for 21 years at Khirbet el-Makatir. Next year in 2020, we hope to have both volumes of final publication out, Volume 1 and Volume 2. So we're working diligently at that, so you'll know the results of that very soon. And then 3 years ago, we began at Shiloh, and so that's what I want to talk to you about today. And so you can see what we have exposed over the last 3 seasons. As you know, the Danish in the 1920s, from 22 to 32, did 4 seasons of excavation at Shiloh. Of course, by our modern standards, they would be somewhat primitive in their methodology. Finkelstein, 4 seasons in the early 80s. What we wanted to do was to connect the work of the Danish on one side with Finkelstein on the other and open up a broader area. So it's my view that we're subject sometimes to misinterpretation if we take narrow areas. So we wanted to open up a broader area and then hopefully understand the site better. So you can see the brownish color is the Bronze Age material. So of course MB3 or MB2C, maybe around 1700, is when the fortification system was built. We have a beautiful section of glacis that we have exposed, maybe the nicest in Israel. So if you haven't seen it, you must come visit us. And actually from the path, you'll be able to look, and we will expose much more of it in the coming seasons. The fortification system continued in use through the late Bronze Age and through Iron I, and other structures were built into it, as you can see. The purple is the Iron I. So for the first time at Shiloh, we actually have structures and monumental structures from the period of the tabernacle. So it's very interesting. And then of course you need to picture that the rest of everything in brown was still in use during that time period in some capacity. And then the orange would be the early Roman or late Second Temple period remains, and that's the largest amount that we have at Shiloh. So as we read pottery, maybe 2,000 pieces of pottery every day. maybe 1,500 of those pieces are from the early Roman period, so or maybe slightly less than that, but it's the most dominant period. And then in the Byzantine period is the green, and I want you to notice this wall right here, which is a patch which was put on the outside of the wall to cover an opening in the wall, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I should also acknowledge a couple of members of my staff. I have a dream team that works with me. I saw Yohef Farhi, our excellent numismatist, and Leah Tramer was somewhere also doing our restoration work, and so we're very, very fortunate to have such an excellent team. Now, of course, you have to lay out a grid, and so we had a couple of challenges in laying out the grid. The Danish had one grid, and Finkelstein had another grid, and then the Antiquities Authority had laid out another grid, and some of them were true north, and some of them were magnetic north, and so we had quite a task, but I think we're on track, and this allows us then to know exactly where the material is coming from in the squares and to track it accordingly. For those of you who have been to Shiloh, you recognize our wet sifting station, which is kind of our headquarters down here, which is a state-of-the-art facility, which I'll also touch on briefly. Now, like a lot of digs, we are using new technologies. We fly drones daily. 5 years ago, the first time we flew a drone, everyone stopped working and got their cameras and took pictures of it. And now, of course, we fly them all day, every day, and nobody even thinks anything about it. We then, of course, with software, are able to compress all of these images into 3D models, and this helps us understand the site. And this really lets you see how beautifully we can now zoom in on these areas. We no longer even draw top plans by hand like we used to because the photography is so good. We can just take those images and then make the notes on those images. We're paperless in the field. All the supervisors working from iPads, all of their data then comes to my computer, which then enables me to make data-driven decisions in the field. And I think that's very important. So it's not just that I have a feeling that we should do something, but we're making data-driven decisions. And this gives you a look at what we're seeing, of course, over here. In the orange, this is some work that the Danish had done. On the far right, you see some of the blue and purple that Finkelstein had, that Finkelstein exposed. So this is Danish on the left and Finkelstein on the right. We opened up the middle and connected everything, and over the next few seasons, we want to open up that entire area. But it seems to me, in analyzing this, after studying it now pretty closely for 4 years, that the storage rooms are grouped in units of 3. So they're organizing these in units of 3, and as we move further back, hopefully we'll understand exactly how that functioned. This is Shiloh Network News.
Welcome.
So I'll skip through that, but we had tens of thousands of people this summer all over the world, and many of you in this room that were following us daily on Shiloh Network News with our updates. Just gives us a way to give people right out of the field news about what's happening. I know that archaeologists in the past have been very protective of their data. We're not going to talk about this. Nobody can see this picture, but it's my view that we need to let everybody know what's going on, and then we'll do the academic publications. We're very diligent. I saw David Ben-Shlomo here somewhere also. He and I just published a peer-reviewed article, so we're very diligent about getting the information out, but I see no reason to hide it either. So as you know, we begin our excavations very early in the morning, and this is primarily because of the heat. So my team, which I think is the largest in Israel the last 4 or 5 years, maybe 150 to 200 volunteers each summer, with 11 U.S. universities, 4 Israeli universities, all working together in an interdisciplinary manner. When people wake up very early in the morning and have breakfast at 4 in the morning, and then get on a bus, by the time they arrive at Shiloh, their Advil has kicked in, their caffeine has kicked in, and now this is the beautiful view that they see as the day begins. And you can see as we're going down very systematically through these squares, what we're revealing on the left is my assistant director, Gary Byers, and then some of you know Abigail, my objects registrar. On the right, this is the article that David and I published a few months ago in JSRS on this amazing pomegranate. So we found this pomegranate at the end of the at the end of the 2017 season. This, of course, is a motif of the tabernacle. So it was only of the sacred fruits, only the only the pomegranate that went into the very presence, into the Holy of Holies on the hem of the priest's garments. Also in Solomon's temple, you had 200 pomegranates that adorned the tabernacle. So finding something like this at a site like Shiloh, of course, is, I think, instructive. To my knowledge, these have primarily in Israel been found at sites that are Levitical in nature, like, for example, Yokneam. So when we found this, I had a sense that there were probably some that had been found in previous digs that maybe they had not recognized. So I went back into the Danish report, and sure enough, there was one that they had found that they had not recognized. They thought that it was a stopper. So I was able to send a member of my team to Copenhagen, Denmark, and there to do the analysis that we needed for publication. So we actually published both of them together. So in the coming seasons, it will be very interesting to see if we have other pomegranates. This is, you can look at the glacis, and now they're smiling very big because they're getting ice cream that day. And if you do something really good, you get ice cream. And so when you uncover the glacis or you reach bedrock or something like that. So they're very excited about that. But notice the red material down at the bottom. That red material is collapsed mud brick, what we would call detritus. So we have the massive fortification system covering maybe 5 acres. Then it has a superstructure of mud brick that has collapsed, and we have about 2 meters of collapsed mud brick on the outside and on the inside of the wall. And so now they're exposing. We actually did a section through the glacis, got a little bit of pottery, which there was no surprise in the reading. It was MB2, very exactly what we thought it would be. And also we know the depth of bedrock at that point. So this gives you a look at the fortification wall, about 5.3 meters wide, with a denticulated or sawtooth pattern as it goes around the site, with the storage rooms then on the inside. As we expose the complete outside, the complete top, and the complete inside, then I think we'll realize our research goals. The area of red is the section of glacis that over the next 2 seasons we anticipate exposing. You can see, of course, the walls and the fallen brick and how this lays out, and understanding the relationship between the different time periods is, of course, critical to understanding the site. We've been fortunate to have a lot of media attention because Shiloh is a very important site. This is a BBC documentary that was filmed last summer focusing on Kiryat Yearim and Shiloh. We're always, we worked at Kerbet and Makatir for 21 years, and we never had a single visitor, I don't think, in 21 years. So we were in the middle of nowhere in the Wild West. And so for us now, we're here at Shiloh excavating every day. We have hundreds of people that come by and want to talk to us. So it's a lot of fun. We have bathrooms and coffee, and it's amazing. Now, many of you know that a few years ago, a horn from an altar was found in secondary usage at Shiloh, less than 10 years ago. And different people have been attributed this, but I think it may have been Shimon Gibson that first identified it. But again, finding something cultic like this, a horn from an altar at Shiloh, kind of like Beersheba in secondary usage, it's very interesting. So we've been keeping a close eye for this. And this summer, it appears that we found 3 horns from an altar. And now this is in secondary usage in a wall. You can see how it's protruding just a few feet away, about 1 meter away, is another horn. And so I've shown this to Saigatin and Shimon Gibson, several others, and seems to be a pretty good consensus. We have not published it academically yet because we just got it a few months ago, but it looks like we have another horn here. And then in a burn matrix, we have what appears to be a 3rd horn. So we'll study this further. But in the area of our monumental building, right by where the pomegranate came from, right by where the Tutmosis III scarab came from, which I'm going to show you, we're getting a lot of interesting material that is cultic in nature. And so, of course, when one is excavating at a site like Shiloh, this is very interesting. We came down upon a plastered surface this last summer, and for those of us in archaeology, this is very important because it gives us what we call a sealed locus. That means that the material underneath is undisturbed. And so the plaster actually abuts the wall. So the pottery reading above it was very clear. We were confident on how we were reading the pottery there. So I was able to anticipate what the dating should be underneath, what the pottery should look like, and if we could get clean carbon dates, what those dates should be. Fortunately, as we went underneath, we did have a very nice destruction layer, nice in archaeological terms. And so we have it in two spots, and then you can see in this picture an even thicker area. So we were able to indeed get good, clean carbon dates. And so I anticipated that the date should come in around 1075 BC based on our pottery reading. And also, if that was all we had that Finkelstein exposed in Area C, a burn layer, but he then was making a large conclusion that the whole site may have been destroyed, perhaps by Philistines at that time. Well, I think now he was probably right, because we have the exact same thing. And you can see the carbon results came in. I estimated they should be 1075. They came in at 1060 plus or minus 30, so exactly where we expected that they would be. So here we have glyptic remains like scarabs and seal impressions. We have carbon dates, we have ceramic dates, and they triangulate to help us then date the various strata. And incidentally, at Shiloh, we have 9 strata. Part of our dream team, you see that Lane Rittmeyer does all of our drawings for us, and he's here with Dr. Mark Hassler, analyzing something very interesting. That Bronze Age wall is missing part of it, and the glacis disappears. So we have a huge Bronze Age wall with the glacis abutting it, nothing on the other side. We have glacis-like material in many of the squares, but not actual glacis on the other side of that wall. So I began to ask myself why that would be. Then as we exposed the outside of the wall, we saw that there was a patch on the wall to block up something from an earlier period. As we removed that Byzantine patch, we began to see some symmetry. So I'm just curious about what we might have. So this is only a theory at this point. And so as archaeologists, we can't resist theories, but hopefully further excavation will clarify it. But you can see then what seems to be a threshold here, part of the wall. Now this had a patch about 1.2 meters wide from the Byzantine period, blocking it up for some reason. And then the stones are, if they're just missing randomly, they're missing in a very symmetrical way. So what we did is then to go on the inside of the wall, 5.3 meters, to see what this looked like. And this is right next to where the Danish excavated. And then we have, you can see a burn layer much lower. So when the Danish found these iron one pithoi, these collared rim jars, 6 of them in this room, they did not realize that 2 meters down was bedrock. They thought that they were maybe they were at a floor level being used at that time, but there's still 2 meters of depth, and you can see what it looks like with a burn layer much, much earlier and some very interesting archaeological material right above bedrock. So then the theory is that we might have some kind of a secondary gate into the city. I realize that the term postern gate is more of a early Bronze Age term, but the spring at Shiloh is on the north, and perhaps they also had some kind of secondary entrance. We'll explore that. Here's, you can see the socket stone nearby, and then an upper socket next to it. So there may have been an entrance here at some point, possibly a northern approach road. If you're from Givat Harel looking across. And for those of you who like the idea of the northern platform for the tabernacle, this actually leads right to it. You can see the remains of the monumental building that we are exposing here in our field H1, which will be very interesting in the next 2 seasons, because now having monumental architecture from this period, when I excavated at Khirbet el-Makatir, this is the church that we excavated, I imposed the dimensions of the tabernacle on top of that, and look what it does. I had no idea that the early Christians were seeing themselves in terms of the temple. So that's a ratio of 2 to 1 of sacred, holy to most holy space in the churches themselves. At that time period, of course, you can see how we track our loci. This comes from an old dump pile at Shiloh. That is a bula. We have several bula from old dump piles. You can even see the fingerprint here on the side of one of your early ancestors. The Danish and Finkelstein combined found 8 scarabs in 42 weeks of excavation. 8 scarabs in 42 weeks of excavation. Now, in the ABR excavation, in only 12 weeks of excavation so far, because we do 4 weeks of excavation and then 1 week of restoration, we already have 8 scarabs. Now, does that just mean we're that much better? No, that means wet sifting. So we wet sift 100% of our material. Each locus gets wet sifted. And now on a ratio of 3.5 to 1, for every 1 scarab that was found in the past, we're finding 3.5. I hope you're sitting down for what I'm about to tell you. That means that we as archaeologists have been throwing away most of our valuable evidence. We go to all the effort and all the expense, and we're missing a lot of the evidence. So we're going to be publishing this. Maybe next year I'll be able to talk to you about the results officially, but you get, for example, a scarab of Thutmose III very clearly. And this is one of the earliest scarabs ever found. This is the foundational phase of Shiloh, probably 13th dynasty. We, of course, have handles that are impressed as well in glyptic ways. Last summer, we excavated 154 coins at Shiloh. This is, of course, a common coin of Agrippa I. These are usually late Second Temple period coins. And then each thing, you can see within each square all of the samples that are being saved, the biomaterial from flotation, the bones, the flint, the shells, the fossils, and so forth, so that then we can take all of that through our protocols. And so you can see then in summary what we have accomplished, I hope, in the first 3 seasons, and we're looking at least 3 more seasons of excavation at Shiloh to answer our original research goals. You know, the problem is that as you excavate, you come up with new questions, and it's always difficult to bring it to closure. So I tried to rush through this so that I wouldn't go over time. So thank you for your attention and for inviting me to be here today.